Welcome back to another day of Bible study. My name is Kevin Young. I have the privilege of serving here at Christ Table as lead clergy. If you'd like to know more about Christ Table, really simple. All you need to do is visit the URL that's right there, www.christstable.today. If you'd like to know more about this, just kind of adjusting the hat there. If you'd like to know more about this study in particular, all you have to do is visit right there, go.christstable.today/divinecomedy. There you're going to find a PDF download. That's a study guide that'll walk you through every day of the study. If you want to go back and start at the beginning or just pick up right where we are, every one of these days are self-contained. You can do that. There's background cultural information there in that PDF, as well as a few questions to help you apply that to the community around you and maybe think a little bit more deeply about it. If you would like a printed copy of that, we do have printed copies of those. All you have to do is click on the button there at that site that says Get the Box. And this printed copy of the curriculum comes with several other resources to help you navigate and enjoy this study in particular. One more thing that I want to make sure that you're aware of, this book, it's just one of those days, right? This book, Reconstruct Your Faith, is a journey through my deconstruction and reclaiming of my own faith. It also provides a lot of helpful handholds for those who are discouraged, disconnected, disillusioned with the church, with Christians, with Christianity. It'll help you navigate your own path. And if you'd like more information about that, that URL right there, drkevinyoung.com is the place to find more information about that. Today, we are continuing on this Divine Comedy series where we are looking into the different places in the Gospels where Jesus says things that are witty, that are humorous, that are sarcastic, that are just outright funny, or things that would have caused people to at first chuckle at themselves or at others or at the statement and the twist on words, but then think more deeply about what was going on there. Today, we're finding ourselves in Luke chapter 14, verses 1 through 6, where Jesus tells a story about a Sabbath rescue. Jesus has had a lot of interactions with the Pharisees in the Gospels, and many of our divine comedic moments have also centered around the Pharisees. It's always important for us to say that sometimes the Pharisees are a foil in these stories and these plots that are happening here in the Gospels, but they're not always the bumbling, idiot, hypocrite, difficult people to deal with. Many times the Pharisees are the heroes in the story, and we need to remember that as well. Jesus held them to a higher standard because they profess to know God best and be the most mature, and so Jesus held them to that standard and oftentimes would call them out. So here in Luke chapter 14, verses 1 through 6, Jesus is actually going to eat dinner in a home of a leader of the Pharisees, and the people were watching him very closely, as I'm certain that they often did, but especially when he was around Pharisees and in the home of a Pharisee. Is he going to follow customs? Is he going to respect what conversation is going to go on? And typically meals and dinners like this would have been kind of a community occasion. People would have come and watched and listened on the outskirts of the room or the outskirts of the table in big meetings like this. So there was a man there whose arms and legs were swollen. We're not told exactly what was the difficulty here, but just that he had some sort of a medical issue that we would assume was something probably that was chronic and not just very limited. So Jesus asked the Pharisees and the experts in the religious law. It may well be that Jesus here is looking for an argument or a conversation or a point at which to kind of help unpack some difficulties that they had in their theology in order to maybe retrain them in a way that is more godly. So he looks at the Pharisees and the experts in the religious law, and he asks this very pointed question after noticing that this man was there. Is it permitted in the law to heal on the Sabbath day or not? The Sabbath day there in that time would be Friday night sunset to Saturday night sunset, which was a time that is taking a Sabbath in respect and honor of God, who took a Sabbath rest after the days of creation. And so it was a day for rest, a day when no work should be done. And so the question, the thinking is, healing considered work? So is it permitted by law to heal people on the Sabbath day or not? They refused to answer him, which usually indicates whenever I refuse to answer somebody, whenever you refuse to answer somebody, whenever somebody refuses to answer me or pivots or avoids completely, that there's an understanding that there is a trap, or there's an understanding of guilt or shame or a difficulty in our thinking here that we don't probably necessarily want to face or allow the other person to understand that we see that it's there as well. We don't want to give them credit for that, right? The benefit of having gotcha. So when they refused to answer, Jesus touched the sick man and healed him and sent him away. So this is likely a Sabbath dinner. This is probably the Friday night at sundown dinner that would have been normative in order of celebration of the Sabbath. So he turned to them and he said, which of you doesn't work on the Sabbath? Let's just be honest. All of you work in some way or other on the Sabbath. You break the laws that you prevent others from breaking and guilt and shame them into it. If your son or your cow falls into a pit on the Sabbath, don't you rush in to get him? And again, they could not answer. So what's going on here? Why does Jesus give this illustration of a cow or a son falling into a pit? Jesus here is using an argument that they would have been very familiar with, a parable that uses lesser to greater reasoning, that compares two things, two categories, one lesser, one greater, in order to help teach a lesson here. The lesson being taught, obviously, I think, is that there are some things that are permitted on the Sabbath, and you permit them, and God permits them because it's more important. It's more needful. It's the better thing to do or the right thing to do. The specific mention here of an ox, a cow, and a child, a son, references actual legal categories in Jewish law. So they had a category for how to handle and what was work and what was not work in relation to livestock. And they had a category for what was work, what was allowed, what was not allowed in relation to children and individuals. What Jesus does here, which you might not see whenever you first read this, is Jesus sets up this tension between which of you will rescue an ox or a cow if it falls in a pit on the Sabbath, and which of you will rescue a son if it falls in a pit on the Sabbath. Some of them probably would have rescued a donkey or an ox or a cow. They would have rescued an animal if it had fallen into a pit, if it was mules, donkeys, oxen, cows. Like you can't, in our frame of reference today, fully explain the importance of a singular animal like this to a family. It was their bank account, it was their livelihood, it was their food, it was their cash cow. They had a tremendous amount of their resources invested into this, and to lose it would have been very, very, very catastrophic. In fact, it could have changed everything to even lose just one because it fell in a pit on a Sabbath and you couldn't rescue it and you had to leave it there or sit with it. Or if it's hurt or injured, you have to allow it to stay there and then wait up to 24 hours in order to do something about it. Many of those individuals would have gone ahead and done it, would have gone ahead and helped, would have pulled it out, would have done work, but many of them perhaps wouldn't have. But most of them would have because of the financial ramifications of it. If their son had fallen in, had gotten hurt, are they literally just going to stand there and let their son bleed out, their child bleed out into a pit, not help him out, force him to stay there overnight? No, they're going to help that individual out. And so what Jesus here is saying, there's this person over here who needs helped out with something, who's broken, who has an issue. It's an actual person physically right here. And you're treating donkeys better than this individual. You're looking at this person who's in pain, who needs help, and you're demeaning them to a level at how you treat donkeys, asses. You're being an ass in the way that you treat asses and the way you treat other people. Don't you understand that people are infinitely greater than donkeys and oxes? And y'all are doing things on the Sabbath, all y'all. So why are you putting this individual, binding them, preventing their healing, not helping them, whenever you're doing things that are helping yourself? Like getting that donkey out of a pit whenever it falls in. What Jesus has done here is he has created a scenario for them where they have no option but to admit their failure and the wrong think of their theologies. It's why they were silent. If donkeys get Sabbath exceptions, why not people? Why is this donkey more important than this man who needs healing? The crowd in the room during that dinner would have loved this, because they were all used to being prevented from doing things that were needful and helpful to their people because of the rules that were in place by them, on them by others. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. Make sure that you visit that URL, get the resources that are there for free for you at go.christstable.today/divinecomedy. Looking forward to being back with you tomorrow as we continue on this study series. And until that time, happy reading.